Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show, the podcast where we dive into the raw, real, and often complex world of next generation leadership in family businesses. I'm your host, Jonathan Goldhill, family business coach and advisor to entrepreneurial and next generation leaders, navigating the tricky waters of growth, succession, and legacy. Leadership, succession, and innovation are a complex journey for many founder-led companies as they transition decision-making and control to the next generation. Today's guest is Marshall Rabil, the newly appointed president and CEO of Hubbard Peanut Company, known for their super extra large Virginia peanuts, and a brand that's become a staple in the South and beyond. Marshall is not just helping run the family business, he's helping reimagine it. Known to many simply as Hubs, who embodies that journey beautifully, and founded by his grandparents in 1954 in Sedley, Virginia, Hubs is the country's oldest specialty peanut brand built on generations of quality, care, and community. A third-generation leader, Marshall blends tradition with transformation. Before stepping into the CEO role, he served as director of sales and marketing, bringing a global perspective to the family business. He had a background in sustainable development and education abroad. His leadership today is rooted in preserving the values that made Hubs a household name while modernizing the business for long-term growth and relevance. In this episode, we are delving into the delicate balancing act of leading a legacy brand in a rapidly changing world. Marshall and I are going to talk about navigating succession, a topic I've been coaching on extensively, and how innovation, technology, and family values intersect in that journey. We'll also address some very real challenges facing many rural multi-generational businesses today, from adapting to new technologies and competing with private equity-backed brands, to recruiting and retaining talent in a limited labor pool. If you're part of a family business, guiding one, or love hearing how tradition can evolve without losing its soul, this conversation is for you. Whether you're leading a family business, preparing the next generation, or fascinated by stories of entrepreneurial resilience, this episode offers real insights and inspirations. So grab a snack, maybe a handful of peanuts. I've got my home-cooked salted Virginia peanuts right here, and let's dive in with Marshall Rabil. Marshall, thanks for the lengthy introduction and welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That was a fantastic introduction, Jonathan. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of fun with it. And I thought, it's really interesting to, I don't want to get into your background, but it's really interesting. I'd never heard of your peanuts company. And, peanuts to me are something I've been eating all my life. And to some people, they just might think, well, that's just a commodity brand. That's like salt. I can't differentiate that. But salt today is no longer just like white salt. It's pink salt. It's different kinds of salt in different places. And I'm sure your peanuts have a lot of similar similarities to that. But let's start, we'll get to that, but let's start with your background and how you entered the family business.
Sure. Well, my grandparents started the business from their home where I'm sitting here today in Sedley, Virginia in 1954. So I was born into this family, like many family businesses. My mother was running the business with my grandparents in the 80s and 90s. And so I grew up coming here all the time. I knew the business, and obviously was marketing the product at a young age by giving peanuts as teacher gifts and throughout school and all sorts of things like that. But I went to college and knew that I wanted to spend some time away from rural Virginia, and I always had in the back of my mind that I was going to come back to this community. But I wanted to travel, and education was going to be the path that led me around the world for most of my 20s. And so I did. I worked in education. I started in Japan, working for the Ministry of Education in a small village called Nishi Yoshinomura, which is a community not so unlike Southampton County. Their main agricultural product were persimmons, and so there were persimmon orchards everywhere. It was a beautiful place to live and work. But I was still on that academic journey of wanting to experience things abroad. So I started leading college students on study abroad trips through Portland State University with an organization called Carpe Diem International out in Portland, Oregon. And that was a wonderful education of just experiencing different cultures and projects around the world. So you mentioned sustainable development and just development projects in general. So every semester had a service component to it, and we did a lot of different development work around the world. And while I was doing some of that, I was really kind of thinking about home, because home in rural Virginia has a lot of the same issues that I was dealing with abroad, as far as poverty and malnutrition and lack of education. And I was really starting to think, how can business be a catalyst for change in our community? And so I knew that we had this great brand, but I wanted to figure out a way to integrate some of the community initiatives through our business, and that was attractive to me, and ultimately one of the reasons that I came back, and has been some of the stuff that I've been working on with some of the partnerships that we've developed with the food bank and other organizations. So yeah, started abroad and then kind of worked my way back. But I did stop in Nashville, Tennessee for a few years. I was working on a different type of a startup. While I was working on that startup, I started working at Whole Foods as a specialty food buyer, because I wanted to learn the grocery industry, because that was a target market for us. Obviously, regional grocery chains are still a great customer for us. We work with Wegmans in the Northeast, the fresh markets like that. So working at Whole Foods gave me a really good education as well into the complexities of distribution and grocery. So I did that prior to coming back to the business as well. So I did have some more relevant experience with our food brand as opposed to the international education piece, but that did broaden my perspectives for sure.
Now, how old were you when you first started working in the business? And maybe how old were you when you thought, I might go work in this business someday?
I remember as a teenager thinking that this would be a good business for me to come back into. But I knew that I wanted to experience some other things. And so I think, in my late 20s, I also did work here in the business seasonally. I would answer the phones for customer service. I would work on the production line, putting cans in boxes, stacking pallets, and sweeping floors and cleaning up the kitchen with Vernon in the afternoons. And so I definitely had some experience in the business in my 20s. But really, I moved back to Franklin in Southampton County in 2016 after 2 years of working remotely doing remote sales. So I did a fair amount of traveling from 2014 to 2016, working full time for the business. But 9 years ago, I moved back and have been on this journey at home since. So most of my, well, I'm 44 now, so I moved back, about 10 years ago. So, yeah.
Okay. I was just about to ask how old you were for perspectives for our listeners. So, when you were working in the business when you were younger, was it something that you were required to do by your parents? Was it something you wanted to do? Was it did you want to do it because you wanted to make extra money? What was the motivation?
Um, well, I definitely was not required to do that, and really wasn't even encouraged really to do this. So I was always encouraged to go out and do something before you want to come back here. So that was always kind of our family mantra was you need to go and work for someone else first, and learn some other things. And I think Whole Foods, the culture that I learned at Whole Foods was very valuable to some of the things that I've been working on now. And this was pre-Amazon acquisition, and I
Right.
was really intrigued by John Mackey's philosophies of conscious capitalism. That book really rang true to me. Um, but I was definitely interested more than needing a paycheck of trying to learn the business, to interact with customers on the phone from a customer service standpoint. So it was more of a get to know our business, an educational journey as much as I needed a paycheck or I was required to do it. I was genuinely wanting to start to get an idea of what it was like to work here. And so that was, working seasonally because we're a very seasonal business,
Yeah.
still are. But it really helped kind of get a bigger picture of who we are on the day-to-day side.
So, little side story here. When I graduated from my MBA program at USC, 1989, I knew I was still in love with the natural foods industry. I had been involved in the natural products, holistic health business. And I went up to Berkeley, California from Los Angeles to look at a company. There was only one store, and it was the Whole Foods Market in Berkeley, California. And, Berkeley is kind of an early stage adopter. And so I was like, is this company going to be like really big? It was a big market. And I had the sense it was going to be a really great company. Um, but when I got out up there with an MBA and realized that a store manager job for $30,000 probably wasn't what I was meant to do with an MBA, but I did walk away with a little red handbook. It was almost the size of my palm, and it was their values, their history, their like ways of being, and I was so like in love with that company. Little did I know that my best friend would be a venture capitalist and would back that company, and then I would put some products on its store shelves, some dog food many years later. But what a great story about how they connect to their community and to their customers. And so what I want to now, queuing you up to ask, how does your company's history as a family business, because we know family businesses, right? They're very loyal to their community and their customers. You know, how does your company's history as a family business shape the way you connect with your customers and community? Kind of maybe with all, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and I think that's some of the things that we value the most are how we kind of integrate Hubbard Peanut Company into our community. Um, and recently, our last kind of expansion project started in 2019, and we took an old grocery store. Um, it was a farm fresh grocery store that closed, and it's now called the Hub's Vine, and it's about a 60,000 foot grocery store. But the front end of the store is 7,000 feet, and it's an event space, retail market that really has become this kind of unofficial welcome center to our community. It's a community center where we host the annual Chamber of Commerce dinner, where we have our economic development startup awards. We have a lot of fundraisers. We've even had weddings and proms, and we have created this space for our community to come and gather and to buy their peanuts there. But also because it was a grocery store, we had all of the equipment from the deli and the bakery. So we have a little cafe. At one point, my grandmother wanted to. We're way out here in the country, where our kind of home quarters are, and she had talked about having a roadside stand where people could get ham biscuits and Brunswick stew when they came to pick up their peanuts. But now, I guess 50 years later, we have that community center space, where we have a place for people to gather, but we also have had partnerships with the food bank, and we had additional warehouse space. And so obviously being in the food industry, kind of tackling food insecurity at home is a valid and a cause that makes a lot of sense for us. Peanuts are a very nourishing product, a crop that is grown around here that sustains our community in many ways. And so partnering with the food bank, we gave them space to do the backpack programs for all the schools. So different civic organizations would come to the Hub's Vine, and we would pack the backpacks there. And now that has developed, and today actually we're doing our neighborhood kind of corn harvest at Izzy's Field, which is the first farm to food bank project in the state of Virginia, where the corn is being harvested right now. And so that corn is going directly to the food bank, and the peanuts are in the ground, and that's the peanut project that we do at Izzy's Field. Are all shocked the old-fashioned way, so they're on stakes and they're dried, sun cured. And Elisha Barnes is a fourth-generation farmer who really is preserving the history and culture of shocking peanuts. But the sales of that particular product also go to the food bank because we want a direct connection. So we fund that field through a culinary arts and education festival called Homegrown Harvest that we put together in October to celebrate the harvest. But that funds the field, and so it's all kind of interconnected with how our brand is working with chefs and students who are coming from the culinary arts program, local high schools that are working alongside the chefs to raise money to fund the field and the farm that then supports the food bank through community gardening efforts with the corn harvest, with the peanut harvest, and so forth. So we're continuing to be seen in our community, and trying to grow our brand nationally, but really focus on who we are here in Franklin and Southampton County. And it's been nice to see some of these projects come together and develop over the last several years, which has been my main goal, really. And so it's been fun to see it kind of come to fruition.
So inspiring, Marshall. I spent, so after I didn't take that job at Whole Foods, a few months later, I'm having already established my consulting practice. I joined an economic development firm, and I spent the next 10 years in Los Angeles, in the San Fernando Valley, which is a big area, working on business retention, business improvement, business education. So we provided entrepreneurial training, consulting, and then small business financing. And then we created an overall economic development plan and an overall umbrella economic development organization. So having spaces like what you've described for the chambers and for for the community to have an event, and then to connect that to the food bank and sustainability. Marshall, there's such a story there that I hope the next time I pick up a can of your peanuts, that story will be on there, because I think that, like so many other companies that you and I both could probably name, those stories is what connects us to their brand and make them really strong. So
Very much so, and I appreciate that. The single origin product that we sell, it's the first single origin peanut. Because of some of the work I did abroad, I really loved the coffee and chocolate industries around the tropics. But the single origin peanut story really tells the story about Izzy's Field, and one can provides 2 meals, that's on that can, but that's a limited release. Obviously, we only can shock so many peanuts, but we'll work to articulate that story better throughout all of our products.
And don't forget to tell us how I've been eating peanuts all my life. I have no idea. how it's grown, what it looks like in its, native state. So maybe don't forget that piece. Maybe we won't go into that for the show right now, but I think it's pretty interesting.
See?
So let's continue along this line. And core values is so important. I know you're working through them right now. You're just starting on the journey with EOS. And if you haven't already, but you probably do have core values already established, maybe you're finding out if they're the right ones, if they're good ones. But, what are the core values that have sustained Hubs for these so many years? And folks, but when I say core values, I want you to understand that I'm talking about, these are like operating behaviors. And sometimes I use, the military as an analogy of, this is the code of conduct that's expected from you. And you will hire, and you will fire, and you will retain, and you will recruit, and you will evaluate people, like how well do they fit the core values. So tell us about yours.
Well, sure. And the timing of that is fascinating. We actually did just hire a coach, and we had our first kind of base camp through the Pinnacle system yesterday. And I am tasked with kind of redefining those core values. I guess this is the disruptive successor. And I don't want to be too disruptive in a family legacy kind of brand. But one of the things that I do want to make sure that we are defining are those core values. And so we're going through this process right now to make sure. I think we've all lived like quality, attention to detail, reliability, dependable, family focus, community first. Like those are all words that kind of continue to pop up as we're trying to really define what those values are. But we really just went through that same process with looking at all of our team members and saying, all right, how do they fit within our current, where we think what our core values are and their productivity. And so we're looking at some of that right now. So next time we talk, I hope I can give you a way better defined value set, but we are in the process of flushing that out right now. But the words that I mentioned are things that hold true to HJ and Hubbard, who started our company. And we're still just really trying to define those. And as we interview and put out our new website later this month, we want to really articulate those so it's known across all of our team members and our community.
Good. Well, let me give you just a little hint and a little suggestion, something I've used in many of my workshops and one-day sessions with clients where we're focusing on core values. One is I have them look at Macintosh Perry, which is an engineering firm, and you can just Google Macintosh Perry core values. One of my colleagues worked with them to develop it, and what I really liked is that they made the core values into a phrase with a picture and a little story. And so it's more than just a word. It's it maybe is 3 words, a phrase. And then the other one, there's a great video. I've shown it many times. It is Tony Hsieh, the former Tony Hsieh, when he is now
From Zappos?
From Zappos, doing a speech at Stanford. I think it was 2008. And he's defining how they came up with their core values. It's a fun video to watch. It's engaging. He's a good storyteller. And so those are 2 things I think that really help. And it's great that you're going through that process. So I'll look forward to hearing more from you on that.
Yeah, thank you. Zappos is great. And Delivering Happiness is another book that I really love and recommend. It's
superb book, 100%. All right. So we talked about some of the community-based initiatives that Hubs has. And I think that, obviously one of the challenges is probably to get those to connect with the community that's much further away from your home. I mean, outside of the state of Virginia. So any thoughts on what you're doing there? Looking at the community as a global place for where you sell peanuts and how to connect to them.
Sure. Well, I mean, we from our inception, we've been a direct consumer brand with a fairly large, for our category, I think, mail order business. And a lot of the marketing initiatives that I've been working to develop would put us more on the national scale. And that's been kind of developing. Obviously, we're have a presence on Google and Instagram and Facebook and so forth. But we've really focused on kind of the demographics of the golf space, the tennis space, and things of that nature. And we have a professional golfer who is one of our brand ambassadors, and a professional tennis player who's one of our brand ambassadors. And those relationships have helped us get into some major sporting events. We were in the concessions at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. We've got a partnership now with the Players Championship in Ponte Vedra. I'm working on a couple of tennis tournaments right now. And those are events that expose our product to our target demographic, because we want people that are obviously, a corporate customer who will buy gifts for their clients, customers, friends. We're a nice touch point for a lot of people. So we target that type of audience. And those partnerships in the golf and tennis space have really helped us develop some of our national presence. Now, we're really still at the beginning phases of some of our marketing efforts, and looking at some of the next phases of our strategic planning. We believe that we really need to invest a little bit more in marketing. Our customers have by far been our biggest advocates and marketers. I mean, word of mouth drove this business from 1954 to 2000, and so it's been our customers that have, your grandparents had them, and now you have them. Kind of, that's how our business has grown. But I think with concerted efforts and the strategy, we can really try to tell our story to a larger audience. And so we've been looking at spaces that make sense. Even Orbis is a fly fishing and apparel company. We have a co-branded product with them, and they've got 69 stores across the country in really great areas. And so that's another sport and a space that works for our brand and our target demographic. So having partnerships with regional markets, mom and pop specialty stores, also kind of helps. Out west, we work with natural grocers. I mentioned Wegmans and Fresh Market. So having a presence nationally and then using those markets to kind of help build our brand has also been helpful. But then on the D2C side, it's really just trying to have brand awareness campaigns in segments where we want to be, and where we think that will expose our brand to potential corporate customers.
I like the connection there. I think that you're really onto something with these different niches that you're in. I couldn't help but think of two things. One was the Virginia Slims, which was a tennis tournament way back. Probably you grew up with that, and it was connected to a cigarette brand, as I recall. Right?
Yeah, that's a cigarette.
I think it's long since gone. I haven't heard about it in years. And then also, I think that's really good. The Orvis fly fishing, great connection. So is there a challenge you find? You've come in, you're this new leader, you've been on the scene for quite a few years at this point, but you were in the sales and marketing. Was there resistance from the family because there was a previous vision about how the business was to be run and marketed? It was like all word of mouth. And now you're coming in with these big ideas, it's the college educated kid. He joins our family business, and now he's got these big ideas about how we're going to connect. And I think that's some of the rub for some family businesses is, well, this isn't how we did it back then. And well, mom, dad, this is kind of how we need to do it now. So tell us what your version of that story might look like.
I think initially, I saw an opportunity, and I worked with my mom who was running the company to kind of talk through a strategy for growing sales and marketing, because we really hadn't focused on that. She was doing that, but she was also the CEO of the company. So it really does require someone else to focus on that. And so 2013, I went to our family board and kind of presented some concepts. of things that I thought that we could do, and a variety of collaborative efforts and different product development ideas and so forth. And they welcomed me in that role, because I think they saw the need and the opportunity as well. We had gotten to that place in a business where it's you sell, like a lot of our competitors have done, to this private equity firm that's purchased a lot of people in our space. That was one option. And the next option was or we invest. We needed the new space for production, shipping, warehousing, and the event space that we created. And so that's, we decided to go that direction. And I think had I have not come back or had been interested in something else, we likely would have sold in the 2014, 2015 timeframe. But since then, we really did get our family on board and have invested. And I think our value has multiplied because of some of those efforts, but it required a lot of work. And right now we're in the next phase. We reached our 2025 goals, and now we're ready to move on to the next ones. And I'm very goal oriented in like time blocks of my life. And I look at how my life has gone from high school through college to abroad to the different phases of my journey. And I'm excited to continue the next journey. And we have a board meeting next week where we're going to present some of our kind of our big, hairy, audacious goals for a 10-year with the 3-year chunks to get there. And so that's something that I'm excited to present to them. Obviously that's going to require some different type of structure from an ownership perspective. Like how do we kind of figure out how to compensate our key employees or myself through equity that I don't currently have. I mean, I have equity, but not as much as I would like to have, if I'm going to, know what I mean? So those are the challenges that I think most families are going through. Our family had 4 members of the second generation that have been in this business basically their entire lives as well. But the 4 only had 3. So our family's third generation only has 3 members. And so our 4th generation is already larger than the 3rd. And I'm the only one in the 3rd generation that's working in the business now. So how to navigate some of those dynamics, ownership dynamics, is obviously nothing new to family dynamics and challenges. But that's something that I'm excited about the future, but I want to figure out a way to make it make sense for the team that's making this happen.
Right. So how many current generations of family are in the business, or how many family members are in the business right now?
Well, my mother recently retired and is now an executive advisor. So she's part-time. And I'm the only one in the family. There are 7 owners, 4 in the second generation and 3 in the 3rd. Currently, we don't have any 4th generation ownership. But of the 7, me and my mother are still the only ones working.
Yeah. Talk to me about the private equity backed brands or the competition in the space. I mean, you're not a large company, but it sounds like private equity was already knocking on your doors a decade ago, which means they're probably still knocking on your doors. What's the competitive landscape like? And how do you deal with it?
Sure. So we have a unique category. We're the founders of the specialty peanut category, which is, my grandparents started this by having high quality packaging, by only using super extra large Virginia type peanuts cooked in a unique way, blister fried cooking. So we kind of, every category can be elevated. You mentioned salt, but beef, wines, there's a variety of different beers. Every category has the next level, and we were the next level of peanut. They started this in the 50s, and then we're the only really game in town. We sold peanuts to a number of people that became our competitors that had little roadside markets, and then they started cooking in the 70s or 80s or 90s. And so we started the industry, and now there were 30 companies or so that were doing something similar to what Dot and H.J. Hubbard created. Well, as many family businesses, they were not in the same position that we were necessarily from transitioning from second to third generation or first to second. and didn't have a succession plan in place from a family standpoint. So their plan was to sell to this group. And a private equity group came in and bought several of our competitors. And this is an ongoing process. I mean, they're continuing to buy brands in our space. And then the group that purchased a lot of our competitors has now sold to a larger PE firm that is out of the state with more resources, a great team, a very sophisticated board. And I'm excited to see where they take these brands, because I think there's a huge opportunity to grow our category. I mean, peanuts are healthy, they're sustainable, I mean, require a fraction of water. So there's a lot that they're going to be able to do. But I like where we're positioned, because we still, I think, are seen and respected as the premium peanut in the country and in the world. And they're gonna take it and elevate the planters in the mass markets, in the grocery stores and on Amazon. But we're still want to maintain like our differentiator as the highest quality, the gift quality product. It'll be interesting to see. We're having to spend more money on Google AdWords because there's a lot more money flooding in. And but it'll be an interesting, like I said, just an interesting time to see how they develop the brands that they purchased. There are a couple of us still that are family owned. Of the 20 or so that I mentioned, there's still a few of us, and we work with some of them, which is great. We produce chocolate covered peanuts for one of our close competitors, but it's a co-opetition kind of thing that we do with them. And they're a great family, and they live in this community, and it's fun to have partnerships. But we'll see. I'm just excited to see how this private equity group takes our category and what they do with it. But I like where we're positioned still.
Good. Always when you're thinking about growing a business, you always have to think about preparing the business for an exit or a transfer to the next generation. And whichever one you do, you want to transfer it or sell it at the highest value. And part of that is a timing thing, which we can't always predict, but it's also about understanding what's going on in the industry. So it's good that you're paying attention. I mean,
Yeah.
and as I think about it, Marshall, I mean, I'm trying to think of the peanut brands that people might know. And I mean, the only one that's coming to mind right now is Planters, which is ubiquitous.
That's right. Well, Planters, Amadeo Obasi started Planters in the early 1900s here in Suffolk and Southampton County, in this area. And Planters is definitely the dominant player, but we're not really competing with them either. They're definitely your everyday commodity type brand. But there are several companies like us. But we're going to try to make Hub a more nationally known brand. I don't need to mention any competitors by name, but it's there are plenty in the space for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to drop that on you. It just was trying to
No.
out of like, who was it? And it's interesting if you look into Michael Porter's 5 forces analysis, then you start to look at other products as even substitutes. So what's a substitute for a peanut? Well, a pretzel maybe, or popcorn, or any kind of a snack food. So it's an interesting category. It sounds like you've been steering the ship in a direction that's been really working for you, and you're continuing. So
you say I mentioned peanuts as a competitor, but really you're exactly right. When you're talking about food space in your own gut, we're competing with everything that anyone could eat, or gifts as well. There's so many different things that you can give someone. But what we do have from a gift perspective is it's an inexpensive touch point to say, thank you, I'm thinking about you, I care. And here's a healthy product that you can enjoy and share with your family, or you can take with you on your tennis court, to the tennis court or the golf course or to the beach. So we've got a product that I think has a really nice price point. But we are competing with everything that you put in your body.
So your generation, my generation, has been one that has always had to bring new technology into family businesses. And sometimes that's been an area of resistance from the older generation. What new technologies have you brought in, or or what does that adaptation to bringing in new technologies look like? What does the roadmap look like for you guys?
Sure. Well, we've been a direct consumer brand, so we've gone from just sending a mail order catalog. We've gone from not having computers and not having UPS to now we're in the process of developing a new website right now that should launch at the end of this month. But looking at who your email partner is going to be, or who is your multi-ship partner, what's the back end software system that's working with the website, all of the different apps that plug in, because we are going to have a Shopify Plus website, which we're excited about because that's going to be very familiar to customers. But it's a lot more expensive than our current website. But I think it's going to be a lot more sophisticated from tracking data and looking at some of the campaigns that we run through the Klaviyo and how that integrates with the site. So we've gone from not having a lot of data analytics to now we're putting a tech stack in place to where I think we can really focus on data and the return on our ad spend differently. And I think, technology is ever changing. And I think that is one of my mother's biggest challenges and one of the things that she's excited to not have to think about anymore. Really. But even looking at how valuable AI has been, or even just the note takers and ChatGPT, there's things that there are tools now that we're able to use that really can make things a little more efficient. The access to information and research and best practices. And there's so many things that we can get from technology that we have to embrace. It's not going anywhere. So yeah, and even just automation on our production line. We have a very manual process on our production line, but there are ways to automate that that we're looking at. Now, obviously, there's some investment that goes in with that, and looking at the expense of automating certain pieces are challenging, but that's something we're staying on top of. Fortunately, I've got a COO figure who is really technically inclined and is driving that ship and wants to innovate. And so it's great to have him leading that charge. As long as the dollars make sense, we'll invest in technology where it makes sense. It is challenging, but we're excited about it as an opportunity.
I'm glad,
because ultimately, living in rural Virginia too, you've got a limited amount of people to pull from, and so if technology can replace some of the seasonality or hiring seasonally, obviously we want to take care of our core people and our core team. That's critically important to us. But like, if we don't have to hire as many seasonal people that we can replace with automation in certain functions, then that will make sense and it'll make our lives easier moving forward. So it can solve some problems for being in a rural location as well,
Has recruiting and retaining talent with a limited labor pool been a challenge for the company?
One of the things that I'm most impressed with is our retention of people. We've been in the process of transitioning second to third generation everything, not just my mother to me, but like, we have had a lot of employees that have worked with us for 30 years, their entire career. And so even on the production line all the way to finance and operations, those have been people that have stuck with us, and I think really have appreciated our culture. And so we've been fortunate to retain our talent. And now one of the challenges that I've faced the last 5 years is as they've retired, we've got to bring in new people. So we have some newer folks that we'll see. Hopefully they'll have the same kind of appetite for sticking with us for a career. Jury's still out, but I think we've got a really great team in place, and I feel good about some of the folks that we've put in place behind our long-term employees. So, but yes, I mean, obviously attracting talent. I think whether you're in New York or here, I think it's a challenge across the board. It is ubiquitous and
top challenge for just about all businesses. So, all right. So, I'm going to give you 7 pain points that I find family business experience clients that I'm working with experience. and you maybe already got a preview of them. I'm wondering how you prioritize them. What's most important of these 7 that I'm going to give you, and maybe how because you can't deal with all 7 at one time. Like how do you deal with it? So the first one of them is leadership and confidence issues of a new CEO. Another is the family business dynamics and conflict, which from the sounds of it so far doesn't sound like there's too much going on there. Business growth and scaling, and then operational execution, or what you might refer to as vision traction issues, revenue and financial challenges, exit and succession planning issues, and then just personal work-life balance struggles. So,
well, of those, I do feel like that the family dynamic piece, you mentioned that might not be as challenging, but I feel like operationally, financially, the vision, I think those are all pretty strong suits. I don't know how effective I'm going to be. Hopefully I'm effective, as far as that transition and leadership goes, but making sure that our family is aligned on the vision, and making sure that we have all of our corporate governance in place, making sure that our buy sell agreement is tight, and that because there's a lot of differences of opinions, as one can imagine, on
right.
what that looks like. And honestly, of the 7 things that you mentioned, that is the one that is taking the most time and attention to flush through, because we really need to put some things in place in order for us to do all the rest. Because you have to get the family on board with what distributions look like, with what investment essentially looks like. And so to me, that's the most critical piece. I feel really good about everything else that we've got going on, and that's something that we're really focused on. So looking at buy sell agreements right here. It's it's one thing that we're really trying to right there,
right next to the can of peanuts, because you might need to snack your way through that book. Well, I guess that one wrong. And so, but super interesting that you corrected me. And so this is probably an area where you probably could give some advice to other family businesses experiencing those 7, that this area of corporate governance, buy, sell, alignment of the executive team, the owners, and the direction of the business is so important. Like what advice would you tell another family business owner, or your former self, if you like, as they're facing?
I think be patient, understand perspective. Everybody. I don't have the answer, and I don't really even have any great advice. I am trying to remain patient and to understand different perspectives, and taking it a day at a time. I mean, we've built a business that is 71 years old. We don't move too quickly on anything. So we're not looking for hockey stick growth. So we've got time to get it right. And so, and I think a lot of legacy brands and businesses do. So I have to remind myself too, take a step back. You'll get there. I like things to happen a little quicker than they do sometimes. But I have to understand the perspective that I'm dealing with. And so, ultimately we're all just very fortunate to be having these conversations. To get to this point, what is it? Like less than 10% of businesses get to a 3rd generation or transition, and then less than even 1% of those make over $1 million in revenue, and then less than even 0.5% of it get to 10 million. So like you're talking about, when you get to these conversations, we're just fortunate to be able to continue the conversation. Really.
What would you say is a reasonable time frame for a family to go through that issue, or is it is it continuous and changing and evolving? Is it like, hey, you guys should, if you can't get this done in 3 years, you're not going fast enough, or is it what's the
Oh,
plan?
yes. I mean, well, we some of this stuff it's been going on for a decade, right? But now it's like, okay, now that I'm here, I'm like, okay, we let's get this knocked out. This is a priority. Nobody's getting any younger, when you've got family members in your 70s, it's like, we this has got to get buttoned up. So, I mean, I'm putting a year right now on it. So if we talk again in a year, I want to say that we have this buttoned up and we're aligned and we're moving to our big, hairy, audacious goal.
All right, let's just wrap up with a final question. Maybe what are some things you're most proud of, and that could include your product, it could include your family, whatever, anything you're really grateful or most proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of my mom. She has been navigating this business for 50 years, really. And she's been the leader of the family. She's been the leader of her siblings and helping us to get to where we are today. We would not be in this position if Lynn hadn't led us the way that she's led us. And so I'm really proud of what she's done to get us here. And personally, like, I think that I'm proud of to really see some progress in some of these community initiatives that are taking root, and to see that, since I've been back here, we have grown, and I think it's nice to see plans work, but it takes a lot of time and effort and energy, and really it's the people that are around here, and so I'm proud of the team that I have around me. I'm all over the place, but I have people that are super focused on their roles and do a great job. And so I'm really just proud of our team. And they're excited to continue moving forward. And so I'm looking forward to working with them for the next 5, 10, 15 years or however long. So that's, yeah.
Marshall, I want to thank you for being on the show, for being so open and candid and sharing. I thought it was really interesting, and I hope you'll come back in a year and or two and give us your updates and tell us what's happened, and that we'll stay in contact. I'll close out with, folks, this is the real stories of a guy who's taking over the family business, has been in it for a number of years. He's earned the respect of his family, and he's now leading the vision into the next generation of a multi-generational business. So you could do it too, and you just need to find your you have to find your heart, you have to put your head into it, and you gotta put some grit into it as well. So Marshall, thanks so much for being on the show today.
And thank you, Jonathan. It really was a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, folks, you know the drill. If you've got good value from this, please share it with others, like and subscribe. Stay tuned to other future episodes, and give us a good rating on your podcast listening application of choice.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful, so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session.
Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.